You are listening to the Intelligent Vocalist Podcast, episode 182.
Welcome to the Intelligent Vocalist with John Henny. This is the podcast dedicated to help you be a smarter, better, more informed singer. And now, your host for the Intelligent Vocalist, John Henny.
Hey there, this is John Henny. Welcome back to another episode of The Intelligent Vocalist. I do so appreciate you spending your precious listening time with me. All right, today I want to talk about inner and outer singing. And by that, I mean where your focus is as you are controlling or attempting to control your instrument. And it's a bit of a cause and effect question. And inner singing, inner instructions are those that are more causational. And they deal with very specific adjustments, such as adjusting your posture, having your stomach come out as you breathe, making sure your rib cage doesn't collapse, paying attention to the position of your larynx. How are you adjusting a vowel? Are you dropping your jaw? Are you moving your tongue? All of these instructions that help us get to the desired effect. And there are schools of singing that are very causation driven. And they just drill the student on all of these adjustments. Now, there is another general school of singing, if you will. I'm not trying to define hard lines that a teacher is primarily one way or another, but teachers will tend to focus in one area or another. And the second school is more outer. And these are instructions like feel your voice carry to the back of the room. Feel the energy from your feet to the top of your head. Imagine the audience is behind you and you're singing to them. And these are more about the effect of singing. It can be sensation driven. It can be more driven in terms of your thought, a bit more abstract and metaphysical. And this type of instruction doesn't pay as much attention to the effect. It's more about the cause. It's more about the big picture. And there's been a fair amount of research into motor learning, especially with athletes. And you would think that the inner instructions and the more precise causational situations or adjustments that the teacher makes would be more effective. But the research shows something different. It's actually the outer effect-driven instruction that tends to be more successful. And I think that part of that has a lot to do with the amount of experience that the subject has, especially with singing. When you first come to singing, you have to build your instrument. You don't get to go down to the store and buy an instrument. I am a rather mediocre guitar player. And mediocre is being kind, but I do enjoy it. But if I want to spend the money, I can have as good a guitar as any professional guitarist. I can't play it that well, but the instrument itself is fully functioning. However, the voice, when we first come to it, is not fully functioning. I can reach out to a piano, regardless of my experience, and play a middle C, and that piano will function really well. And the C will sound great. Not so much with the voice. The instrument has got to be put together. I recently heard this idea that I really loved. before you can be in a sailboat on the open water and just set your sail and just skate across the surface of the water in complete freedom as the wind blows you one direction or another direction. You have to have a functional boat. You have to have a boat that can float on water that's not full of holes. And in the beginning, we have to fix holes in our boat. And for most of us, our voice is a rather leaky vessel. So these internal instructions can be very important in the very beginning when you have no concept of proper breathing, what support is, how vowels will work, what vocal registers feel like, vowel adjustments, the difference between head voice, mix, chest voice. All of these things will likely be very foreign to the beginning singer. And they all have to be addressed. And the outer instructions that look more on the big picture don't work as well, in my experience, for the beginning or developing singer. We really have to focus on the micro adjustments. At first, they're broader strokes, but we can begin to get more and more dialed in so that the singer can first experience, oh, here's my chest voice, here's my head voice. Maybe there's a break, but at least I can access both of them. And now I can begin to adjust and feel that middle voice or that mixed voice, that transition between the two. And oh, here's how vowels will affect that. And here's how airflow versus the resistance of my vocal folds will help give me a more balanced sound so that I'm not too breathy or I'm not squeezing. All of these factors that come into play. But it's really easy to get stuck there. And I have worked with singers where I've had to tell them, you sing better than you realize. They actually have much more technique than they give themselves credit for. And they're approaching the instrument. They're approaching the boat as if they are still fixing leaks. And the leaks are no longer there. What they've got to do is get the sail up and allow themselves the feeling of just floating across the water and the sensations of really singing. And people will get stuck. It's almost like they've studied too much and they get in that technician mindset. And very few people will listen to you for technique. And there are certain singers where I will listen to them for their flawless technique, but they don't really move me musically. I don't really listen to them for enjoyment, whereas there are singers who are not as technically perfect, but they connect in an emotional way, in a musical way that I just find absolutely beautiful, and I'll listen to them for enjoyment all the time. And I don't care about their technical imperfections, unless the technical imperfections reach a point where their voice suffers and they can no longer sing. But that aside, especially if they're singing within their limitations, if they're not trying to push their voice, it can be absolutely wonderful. And you have to be careful when you're studying singing of not getting trapped in this inner game. You have to let yourself go and sing and really start experiencing this outer game of singing, the effect of singing, allowing yourself to just experience sensation, allowing yourself to have rather abstract ideas that you can think about in order to get these micro balances to occur. The bottom line is there is so much that goes into singing a well-balanced note that you really can't think about all the elements. And eventually it needs to just become this bigger, more abstract picture that the event itself, the expectation of it, just kind of the mind picture of what it's going to be is enough, rather than getting down into the micro level of holding your rib cage, your posture, how much air you're sending, fold resistance, vowel, where your tongue is, your lips, your jaw. It doesn't work that way, and it certainly doesn't work that way in exciting singing. It needs to be more of a free event. It needs to be more emotional. I'm sure I've told this story before, but I was particularly shown the truth of this when I took it was an acting through music class. Brilliant acting teacher Carol DeAndrea, who teaches here in Hollywood, and you can go to her website, Carol. It's like Dan DAN Drea.com, and Carol would have the student sing the song, and then she would make no technical adjustments with the voice, because she's not a voice teacher. She's an acting teacher. She would make emotional adjustments. And I remember when I first went to the class, and I'd been teaching for quite a while, and I'm thinking, ooh, I'd adjust this, and I'd have them do that, and I'd do this with the vowel. And Carol would make an emotional adjustment, and they'd sing better. And it really confused me at first. What's going on here? Wait a minute. There were no vocal adjustments done, and yet they sounded better because she was more in the cause. I'm sorry, in the effect, in the big picture, in the emotional context, in the connection. And actually in the finished vocal performance, because that's the whole point of singing, is to emotionally connect and communicate. And she went straight there, and yeah, they sang better. Now, could some of these students benefited from more inner command of their instrument? Absolutely. But if you get stuck in the inner, you're never going to reach, or you're going to have a hard time reaching this emotional connection. And again, I've seen it so many times with singers who've spent so much time in lessons and in practice, and they can't allow themselves to let go of the inner. They always feel that they have to keep some connection to that. They're so afraid of being wrong, and they've been drilled by teachers who just are so focused on this technical perfection and this inner and all these adjustments that they're unable to let go of it. And I've also seen students where there's not enough command of the inner, and they've taken a lot of lessons, but the lessons have been a little more abstract and just focus on feel this or think this or imagine that, and they have not found a way to eliminate technical issues that constantly follow them. They always have vocal strain, or they always have cracking, and more of the inner work could work for them. And so if you're just starting singing, I would recommend that you spend some time on the inner, not in a mind-boggling way, not with a teacher that gives you so many instructions at the same time that you're scared to make a note, but with a teacher who can gently guide you through getting command of this instrument and the instructions you give yourself. And then you have got to allow yourself to just experience singing and to just experience performance. And even though there's not much performing going on right now, even just for yourself, allowing yourself to emotionally connect, allowing yourself to be technically wrong, but feeling these bigger pictures. And then when you go back to the inner and you find yourself in a balance, switch to an outer viewpoint of, what does this feel like? What is the mind picture of this? What is kind of an abstract instruction? Is it just think brighter? Does it feel more forward? Is this darker? Is it more pensive? Do I feel more excited? Are there colors that you associate? All of that is fair game. The one thing I find the more I'm in this teaching game is how so many methods and ideas are correct. And they're all pathways to basic goals. And the goal, your ultimate goal as a singer, is to be able to use music to communicate and to communicate emotion, to emotionally connect. And technique is just in service of that. So that if you need to emotionally connect on a high C, if that's what the song calls for, and it needs to be a big note, it's the climax of the song, and you're unable to do that, then you need to go back and get the chops in order to do that. That song is not there for you yet. But if all you're concerned with is hitting this high C and all the adjustments you need to make to do it, and does that sound right, and you've forgotten what you're singing about, and you've forgotten that people are listening to you, and you've forgotten what the emotion is, then you're missing so much of singing. You're actually missing the ultimate goal. So play with that, the inner and the outer. Don't get stuck in one or the other. It's like the 4 levels of learning or mastery they talk about. And there's unconscious incompetence. You're not good and you don't realize that you're not good. Then there's conscious incompetence. And that is, wow, you realize that you don't know what you're doing. And that's a painful step, but it's a very necessary one. Then there's conscious competence, which is more the inner. You're able to do it, but you got to think about it. And then there's unconscious competence, and that's the outer. And that's where your sails are open and you are just having this beautiful, almost out-of-body experience of gliding across the ocean and feeling all things at the same time. And a couple of episodes back, I spoke with Annie Little about mindfulness, and I think that's a really, really important concept. And if you do not practice mindfulness, I highly recommend it. So you can begin that idea of just being in consciousness and experiencing all things at the same time and not being judgmental and not over-focusing, but just being in the experience itself. And you need some of that as a singer. You got to get to the beauty. You just have to breathe the air and experience the ocean rather than plugging holes in the boat all the time. Hey, if you want to know more about me, please visit my website, johnhenny.com. Be sure to sign up for my email list. You can get my free vocal warm-ups course. I still have my free piano course there. You don't have to have any knowledge on the piano. It's actually the course previously sold for, I think, $150. I've got it for free there. And if you are interested in voice lessons, my associate teacher here at my music academy, Darlene Yam, has some openings, some limited availability. You can reach out to frontdesk@johnhenny.com and just let Tracy know that you are interested in voice lessons with Darlene, and she can give you all the particulars. And until next time, to better singing. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.